Hello and welcome to Maginative's weekly AI recap. I'm Chris McKay, and as usual, Richard Banfield and I will go over the most important stories of the week. We have lots to discuss, so let's dive right in.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Richard. How are you doing this week?
Doing great. Thank you for asking.
Doing
Lots,
well.
lots of good stuff on the news today. Probably the biggest piece of news that we need to talk about is trillions of dollars.
It is wild. Like when
Yeah,
you think of the scale and scope of what's happening now in the AI space, and the fact that you can have a company raising money that's more than the market cap of the two biggest companies in the world combined, that
yeah.
tells a
So
lot.
tell us about this story. This is actually a really interesting thing. This is really not actual money being raised, but rather the suggestion for money to be raised.
Yeah. So this is a story that we've been tracking for the last couple of months. It first broke by the information late last year that Sam Altman was in the process of thinking about some secret side project for
Mhm.
OpenAI. And it turned out that he was looking into building chips. And he has been talking with a couple different sovereign investment funds, different investors to raise now what is reportedly $7 trillion. And the goal is to
Mental.
build chips. He is adamant that the supply of chips that we have currently won't meet the demand for AI. And so he's going to be working to build chips globally in different countries with different manufacturers and foundries.
Yeah, sounds like a really, really, really important part of the equation is to actually have the infrastructure to support what AI is suggesting it can do. So chips are part of that, but there's also some other infrastructure elements built into these fabrication plants that he wants to create.
Exactly. And as
Right.
you're seeing, like Microsoft recently announced their own chips. Obviously, Amazon, Google, all the players really have been investing in developing their own chips. And
Got
you're
it.
seeing the growth also with companies like ARM, with NVIDIA, and with all the chip startups. So expect this to be a very hot space for the foreseeable future.
Awesome. Something a little lighter and maybe worth mentioning is the fact that another pair of glasses has come out. We obviously spoke a lot about Apple's Vision Pro last week, but Brilliant just brought out a pair of glasses. These look a little bit more, man in the street kind of things. Maybe not quite as ridiculous as wearing Vision Pro in your new Cybertruck.
I really like what Brilliant is doing. I think it's ambitious. I think it's different. I think it just might work. And so the first thing that I love is that it's open source. And
Brilliant.
so anyone can really load their own code into this hardware and run whatever language models you want, whatever AI systems you want on it. And so they're looking to build a community of tinkerers and developers that can really keep pushing this project forward. And I think it's smart because you had companies like Humane and like Rabbit that are basically very opinionated in terms of their hardware and their software solutions. And this allows Brilliant to really take a more experimental approach and to see what the market needs, what the market demands, and also to give that openness and freedom to builders. Just like when the computer age started and you had people building their
Yeah.
own PCs, I think this could be really good. Plus, they look really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a big deal because as we found with Google Glass several years ago, the idea that you are putting something on your face and walking around is a big deal, right? I
Yeah.
mean, how we present ourselves, the associated either coolness or lack of cool or shame associated with something really leads to the adoption. So the business success is deeply tied to the aesthetics of this. And as you and I both know, design is everything when it comes to those kinds of elements. If it's hidden, maybe you can get away with it. But in this case, it's literally sitting right on your face.
These aren't the first pair of glasses that we've seen. You have Snap
Right.
that have their spectacles.
Right.
Last year, Meta released their Ray-Ban glasses with Meta AI built in.
Yep.
So you do have companies that are building solutions, but what Brilliant is doing, they're not trying to record video and post to social media. They're trying to focus on real-time augmented reality with different models in the real time. And I think that makes a big difference. It allows them to build products that are lighter, that are probably more nimble. And we'll see if the market demands more social media posting sorts of content from their glasses, then that's something that they can obviously pivot to do. But to start
Yeah.
off in a very specific and niche space, I think is a really smart move by Brilliant.
Okay, some of the other big stories, I'll just run through them and then we can pick on them as we go through. OpenAI, obviously thinking about what's next after this last generation of GPT that they've launched. What does GPT-5 look like and beyond? Gemini is now a fully fledged thing. It's been rebranded. We're starting to see different versions of Gemini come out. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, there's some fun stuff happening as well. We're starting to see AI really bubble up a lot of really cool stuff, like discovering, where the hidden gems are inside calcified archives, and there's also some medical breakthroughs this week as well. So, yeah, let's start with the cool stuff. OpenAI, right? This is like what everybody's got their hands on right now. It's not, again, like we mentioned last week, it is essentially a standalone product. It is not built into your word processing or your spreadsheet or your whatever. So it still has that element of novelty around it in the sense of like, what can I do with this? What are they going to do to make it a little bit less of a novelty and more of something that we can do or use or understand as an application that would be part of our lives?
So what is really interesting here, I remember a few weeks ago, Bill Gates was interviewing Sam Altman for his podcast. And Sam made a comment to the effect that they're excited to be working where the puck is going, right? But I think back to that when I see what they're working on, because right now everyone is looking to build a ChatGPT replacement. And the luxury that OpenAI has is that they're already working on the next big thing. And it seems they're focused on agents. And for those that don't know, an agent basically is an AI that can run semi-autonomously to do a specific task. So for example, maybe you have an agent that's good at making phone calls. Maybe you have an agent that's good at working your calendar. Maybe you have an agent that's good at writing code. And the idea is that you can have multiple agents doing that one job, working in coordination to achieve bigger tasks. And so what it seems OpenAI is working on are two different types of agents. One that is a web browser that allows you to do whatever you would normally do on the web. So if you want to go to a website, do research, get content, that would be able to go ahead and do that for you. And the second is going to be an agent that can basically operate your computer. And this is really intriguing because it means that you'd have something running on your device that can open your apps, move content from one app to another. This could really change the game. This is where AI could really start differentiating itself from a lot of the workflows and tools that you currently have today into really sophisticated solutions.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see is this very applicable to platforms where you've got multiple devices sitting on top of something else, so systems of systems, where you've got applications running already within a larger ecosystem of platform, and where data needs to be transmitted across, or these handoffs that have often been the weakest link of that ecosystem now can be somewhat automated. So we're going to start to see how these agents might become helpful. I mean, clearly stuff can go wrong, but when it takes, in our world, the design world, when it takes somebody hours to convert a design to code or code to design or even document that, we're going to start to see that stuff be more automated.
And there are a couple of startups that I think are already in this space. And obviously, you have all the big players working on agents, but we're starting to get more clarity from OpenAI around their plans. But there's a startup called Adept AI, and they released a model last month that really helps to kind of start to visualize what tools like this could look like. But the grand plan, I think, is for an AI like a large language model to act as an operating system for the future. And so rather than like your Mac OS or your Windows OS, you'll be looking at having an AI and a mixture of experts that then can coordinate a bunch of autonomous agents to do things at the human's bidding. And so we'll be tracking this very closely, but this is really exciting development from OpenAI.
Yeah, really excited to see that. I think also power efficiencies are built into that. So one of the biggest problems with OS and with running any kind of processing on any unit right now is the amount of energy it uses. And so one of the things that AI is promising is that we're going to have a reduction in the amount of energy required to run these types of things, all of those background services, like the OS in particular, are essentially chewing up a lot of energy, and that's a major issue. So hopefully that's something that we can address as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Which of the next? You want to talk about Gemini?
Yeah, let's talk about Microsoft and Google because
okay.
they did a lot this week.
They did. They were busy. So the one thing that you saw at the beginning of the week was the announcement by Microsoft that they're going to double down on their investments in India. This is obviously the second largest population in the world, soon potentially to be the largest if China's population continues to decline. We're seeing their investment there primarily because this is a very literate, educated population of people who are very interested in this technology generally. But Microsoft has decided that this is a worthwhile market going after. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I think whenever you see the CEO of a large company like Microsoft go to a company and start pitching,
get on a plane and go somewhere. Yeah,
exactly. You know it's like a strategic priority for them, and obviously Satya is from India, and he has lots of roots there. They've been working in the country and doing amazing things for a while. But now you're starting to see where they're looking to aggressively develop partnerships, develop infrastructure, and to help India become that vision that they're working towards by 2030. So one of the big arcs that you can kind of track around the conversations that have been happening this week. In a presentation, Satya basically said, with all the hoopla that was happening after GPT-4 was released, they're still waiting on the competition to catch up. And those are fighting words. Like Microsoft is very confident in their position right now, and they're already moving to the next phase of what they see as their AI rollout. They're working on AI devices for computers, so AI PCs, as they're calling them. They're actually releasing a Super Bowl ad, a really cool Super Bowl ad coming out on Sunday, and they previewed it this week. And it's all about the potential for AI to unlock creativity within individuals. And I think that's going to really speak to a lot of people. And we'll see ultimately if that brings an uptick. But one of the things that did, it solidified Microsoft's branding around Copilot. Gone is Bing Chat and all the other disparate brands. Just like you have Microsoft Office and that became a household name, I think they're going all in on Microsoft Copilot.
It looks that way. Yeah, Mike Davidson, who's now in charge of design at the AI group there, has announced that literally we're going to see Copilot in every single one of the Microsoft products. So I think that kind of ubiquitous nature is, a foretelling of where they're planning to take this thing. One thing I do want to make clear, though, is that when companies say we're going to unlock creativity and we're going to give you the opportunity to focus on what you really want to do, that's corporate speak for you're going to lay off a bunch of people. So I think, we have to be clear that AI is still a threat to some people's jobs, not in the sense that it will replace them, but if you don't know how to make these AI tools or these applications part of the work that you're doing or advance the work that you're doing or amplify it, there will be a threat there. So yeah, I whenever I hear, hey, we're going to unlock creativity, I really just hear there's going to be more layoffs. So I think that's a consideration for this economy that we're in. We're in an election year. We've seen a lot of layoffs already, so we may see connected conversations there as well.
The thing in terms of what Microsoft is doing, they're trying to balance the act. So I think they're doing a lot of education planning investments in India. So as they're going into the country, they're saying, yes, this is going to change everything. This is going to make things more accessible. But we're willing to invest in upskilling and uptraining. And as you know, we are really bullish and aggressive in terms of pushing AI literacy. We think people that understand the technology, that apply it in their workforce and in their day-to-day will ultimately be able to survive and to thrive.
So you got a chance to fiddle around with Gemini Ultra. What are your first impressions?
Yeah, and so to put this in context, Google this week, as we previewed last week, they completely rebranded Bard to Gemini, and they released Gemini Advanced, which is powered by Gemini Ultra. And Ultra is their most advanced model, and on paper, by the benchmarks, this is supposed to be more advanced than even GPT-4. But what we're seeing from a real-world experience, still isn't there, right? You still ask the AI a question, and it doesn't really understand, or it doesn't really respond in a way that you think should be intuitive. And so I think Google still has some fiddling to do to get that to work properly, but at least now Google is in the conversation seriously.
Yeah.
Before with Bard and what they were using, it, yes, they said it was great. They released it as an experimental beta, but they themselves knew that they weren't really competing with the Claudes and the Chat GPTs of the world. And the question here today will be, well, if you're a Google subscriber and you have an adequate enough language model that's built in, that has access to your email, your documents, etc., are you going to pay an extra $20 for Claude or
Right.
ChatGPT? But overall, really great positioning by Google, having it integrated. And we're now going to see them continue to roll out features and capabilities to catch up with Copilot and ChatGPT.
Keeping the branding and the marketing people really busy right now. Lots of changes. Seems like month to month.
You know what would be interesting? I think Google might have a Super Bowl ad also. It would make sense for them to have a Super Bowl ad, or Microsoft is just going to steal the spotlight. And they really do need to get a lot more aggressive in terms of telling their story and making a convincing argument for Gemini.
Well, one thing I want to remind us, or the people that are listening to this, is that, you know, we talk a lot about the four big companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Apple. One of the things that I've started to see just in my own personal interaction with apps is that just about every company is now offering some form of light AI improvement to their app. So if you haven't updated your phone, your apps recently, do that. What you'll notice is, for instance, Booking.com, you can now just say, hey, I'm going to Vegas for a weekend and for a couple of people, and I need this, and I need to rent a car, and it actually sorts everything out for you. So those are the kinds of little improvements we're seeing. It's only February of 2024, so this is kind of a quick advancement, because essentially a lot of these tools would have had to be built maybe weeks or months ago, QA'd, and so we're actually seeing quite a lot of activity, even at a light level, across the board. And I think that's an interesting thing, is that yes, we talk a lot about the big companies and their big advances that can feel a little bit out of touch with what's actually going on. Now we're starting to see these smaller companies bubble up AI into their activities.
Yeah, and I'll call out two small, what I call applied AI solutions. Roblox this week also have real-time chat translations. And so if you're on Roblox, you're playing your games, you'll basically be able to converse with anyone on the platform in your own language. They can see it in their language, but you'll always see it in your language. And I think just simple applications like that will completely elevate the experience for gamers all over.
Well, 7-year-olds around the world are super excited, including my son. Okay, we've got a few more minutes left. What do you want to focus on? We've got some AI stuff coming out in terms of governance and ethics. We've got some other big news. Where do you want to take this for the next 5 minutes?
So I think two big stories. One is AI ethics, regulation, and governance. You're seeing the Western countries really ramp up their efforts to get ahead of the challenges and the problems that we're having with AI. We saw last week with the deep fakes with like Taylor Swift, but this week you had a bunch of companies, Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, all committing to a new standard called C2PA. And that basically will embed metadata within images to ensure that you know who the creator is. Was it created with AI? Where was it created, etc.
And Meta is actually planning on watermarking or labeling every single image, right?
Exactly. How well will it work? It's unknown at this point in time. Obviously, the AI technology will keep evolving. However, to see the industry come together to say, hey, you know what, we know this is a problem and this is a solution that we propose, that's great. So kudos to Adobe.
Maybe NFTs will finally get their day.
Maybe. Kudos to Adobe. They really were the ones that spearheaded this, and they have been a big champion for the Content Authenticity Initiative. And so it's great to see that happening.
Yeah, really, really looking forward to this. I think for me, one of the consumer considerations is how we're going to bundle these things. We were starting to see subscriptions options with certain features added, as you mentioned. Like, would you be willing to pay an extra $20 for this or that? How they're going to bundle this is going to be really important, because that's obviously going to determine where you end up spending your money. So I think bundling, or rundling as they sometimes call it, is going to be a consideration for the next few weeks and months.
Two other regulation/governance topics for this week. The FCC banned AI-generated robocalls. And so this is a big deal. Obviously, spam calls are a massive problem in the US. And so them coming out and saying, hey, this is not going to happen is great. Last night, I was reading a story about the CMS saying Medicare Advantage insurers are not going to be allowed to use AI to deny coverage. So again, within these different industries where AI can really have a devastating impact, you're seeing where regulation is starting to come out and say, hey, let's pump the brakes.
Yeah, well, as a 50-something-year-old who's about to get a routine MRI, I'm delighted to hear that healthcare is taking a step forward. Okay, last story. There's this ancient 2,000-year-old scroll. A couple of young researchers, these are apparently just students who are able to use AI to scan and then determine what is in there. Tell us a little bit about that one.
So this is probably my favorite story this week. It shows what's possible when human ingenuity is augmented by AI. So firstly, this is in archaeology, not the first domain that you'd probably think of when talking about AI breakthroughs, but this one is good. So most people know the story of Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius. It erupted in 79 AD, so almost 2,000 years ago. However, around Pompeii were other towns that were also destroyed but aren't as famous. One in particular is Herculaneum. It was like the Beverly Hills of the area. So think a lot of wealthy people. In fact, there was one house that was previously owned by Julius Caesar's father-in-law, and it had a massive library. So after the eruption, archaeologists have been able to uncover 800 scrolls from this library, and they believe that there could be tens of thousands more. However, the problem was that when they tried to unroll the scrolls, they just crumbled. And so all this time, they've had these scrolls, and they've been trying to figure out a way how to find out what was written on them. But last year, Nat Friedman, who was the former CEO of GitHub, and now he's a prolific AI investor, he announced what was called the Vesuvius Challenge. It was an open challenge for anyone who could come up with a way to decode what was on the scrolls to win up to $1 million. This week, they announced that a team of 3 researchers were able to figure out a way to 3D scan the scrolls and train an AI model how to decode it. It is amazing. So far, they've only been able to decode roughly 5% of the scroll, but still, that's truly inspiring when you think about it. It's a great story. I highly encourage you to go to the website and check it out. But of course, everyone wants to know, what does the scroll say? So apparently the passage discusses how the availability of pleasures like food and music affect how much we enjoy them. Super deep. But of course, they throw some shade at some other schools of philosophy like the Stoics.
That's amazing.
But overall, it reads like a blog post of their time, which is hilarious.
Wow.
This year, their goal is to decode the remaining 95% of the scroll, and that's the challenge number 2.
Oh, Chris, thanks for that. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and lovely to have another update in the bag.
Awesome.
Cheers, Mike.
Well, that's all we have time for today, but there's so many more stories that we didn't get a chance to cover. Hop on over to Imaginative.com if you want to read those stories, or if you're a newsletter subscriber, we'll be sending out the newsletter later today. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know. And if you want to support the work that we're doing, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to get notified for future videos. So until next week, one love.